Your job is not to win in this industry. Winning implies you're going to eventually lose. Your job is to get the issue resolved. All right, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Labor Thoughts Podcast. We're looking at getting these out more regularly now. I know it's been a minute since they were published, but hey, we're back. We're back in action, and we've got a great cast here with us today. Today's episode is what I wish I knew when I was new. For all of you out there that are experienced managers or contractors or whatever it is you do in the industry, and you've got a little time under your belt, you probably have a list of, this is the stuff I would have done differently, or this is the stuff I would have put more energy into or more time. And the folks we have with us today probably have very similar lists. And what I'd like to do is let them talk about it a little bit. For the benefit of those of you that have a lot of experience in the industry, you may catch something from them that you didn't know. But also, we have a lot of new faces, both in NECA and the IBW and our contractors' offices. So this is a great chance for those folks to learn from our more experienced individuals in the industry. But you guys didn't come here just to hear me talk. Why don't we hear from some of our guests here? I'm going to go in order from what I see on my screen, and I'm going to start with Mr. Jeff Scarpello. Jeff, if you just give us a quick introduction.
Thank you, Ryan. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jeff Scarpello. I'm with NECA, Penndale, Jersey chapter, where I'm the executive director.
Thank you, Jeff. Let's move on. Les?
Hi, I'm Les Monahan. I'm with the South Texas chapter of NECA. I started in 1996. Came in from outside of the industry not knowing anything, and we'll get more details on that in just a few minutes, but that's kind of my backstory.
Cool. All right, Richard.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Ryan. Appreciate it. My name is Richard Padilla. I've been in NECA for about 8 years now. I'm the executive director for the Atlantic Coast NECA chapter. We cover pretty much most of Virginia, south of Richmond, and all of North Carolina and South Carolina.
Awesome. Thank you, Richard. Last but certainly not least, Mr. Steve Gaines.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. It's good to see everybody. Good morning. Steve Gaines with Southeastern Line Chapter NECA, Executive Director.
Well, that's obviously not their full story. There's more to the tale for each one of them. So I don't know. I'm not going to really go any crazy order here. I like to kind of mix things up. I could see Jeff smiling because he's experienced that with me before. Les, why don't you tell us your backstory? How did you get to be Les Monahan?
Well, I was gainfully unemployed for about 3 months, and this ad showed up in the newspaper here locally, so I went and talked to a recruiter that the chapter was hiring, the executive director at the time. They sent me off for a psychological evaluation, which I somehow managed to pass, and 28 years later, here we are. I had no experience with the industry, didn't know anything about trust funds. I didn't even know we had a union in San Antonio. Never knew anything about collective bargaining, totally came from outside the industry. So my baptism was by fire. Started off with just no experience in this particular endeavor, knew nothing about 501c6 nonprofits. Was totally outside the industry and pretty much clueless for a while.
So where'd you come from? Like, was it kindergarten and then here?
First job out of college, I'd worked for a Fortune 100 company that sold automotive aftermarket products. Worked for about 9 months for a building materials company and was fired by a pager in a payphone in New Braunfels, Texas. And so then I was sitting unemployed for this job, came along about 3 months later and took it and really never looked back.
How about Steve? How did you get to be Mr. Gaines?
Absolutely. I was an 11-year career law enforcement officer and met a gentleman through a partner that I was working with who was in the industry and got connected to NECA that way. Didn't know anything about NECA, had no understanding of any of the things that I would be getting myself into, specifically related to the line industry. And so I went to work for the first 4 months. I worked under the NECA national staff member at the Covington office. They stuck me in a room, gave me a bunch of books and a bunch of old videos to watch from the 1930s and 40s, and I spent a lot of my time reading and doing that, somewhat being quizzed. They told me that when I went and asked them if there was any type of training or anything, they said, no, it's kind of baptism by fire. So hang on and have fun.
Baptism by fire, drinking from a water hose or a fire hose. That's what it is. A lot of fire in this industry, strangely enough. Am I missing any of the phrases that just like when you first come on?
Just information overload.
That's another good one. You get hit with those all the time. Steve, I think it was you that told me by about year 3, you'll start to feel like you have your feet under you. And I'm looking at some head nods. So I think you're pretty close to spot on there, because by about year 3, I didn't feel like I was trying to remember the acronyms as much anymore. And I was starting to put faces to names and kind of feel a little bit more confident in my decisions. But again, you guys aren't here to hear about me. Why don't we talk about Jeff? Jeff, how'd you get here?
I was born and raised in the Philadelphia area, and I went to law school in Philadelphia and ended up working for a large law firm in Philly. And Nika was our client. And I began representing the chapter 30 years ago, and I represented a number of the trust funds. We have, I think, over 60 trust funds in our chapter, and I was counsel on many of those. So when Larry Bradley, my predecessor, accepted the position at the NEBF, I was asked to become the executive director. So I've been here for the last 22 years.
You have an interesting or a very niche experience too as an attorney, because you're in that ERISA world, the word that likes to scare everyone, and that's very beneficial. I mean, to have that type of experience and then to come in as a manager, because a lot of us rely on attorneys, or especially ERISA attorneys, when we get into that, because that's the one area we try not to dabble. We do leave that to the attorneys. So you coming in with that type of experience is invaluable, and obviously has proven extremely successful for you and for the chapter. So that's amazing. Richard, I didn't forget you, man. Tell us about yourself.
I was getting worried there. Yeah. So I started with Nika about 8 years ago. I grew up in the Northern Virginia area, just a short drive from where I am now in Richmond. And I went to college at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, where I got an international business degree. And when I graduated, I started looking for, what I wanted to do after college. I was lucky enough that Nika had posted on my school's, career board site. And I was like, well, this sounds kind of interesting from how they described it, but I'll be honest, I didn't really have a clue as to, what it was, or same with, Les and Steve, coming from outside the industry, barely knew what a union was, didn't even know what a journeyman was. So it's, it's been a long journey since then, but, looking back on it, it's been great. But from there, Nika posted on the school's career board and for their staff associate training program, which is essentially a chapter manager trainee program. And I was placed in the Midwest region. So I did some training under Steve Krieg, who's at our national office. He's a great mentor. And spent about a year and a half out in the Midwest region. And after completing that program, I was offered a position at the Wisconsin chapter as the assistant director there, where I was there for about 4 years. Then from there, had an opportunity to become the executive director at the Central Florida and Florida West Coast chapters. Got a lot of good experience there and learned a lot. And then I had the opportunity to come back home here to Virginia, and which has brought me to the Atlantic Coast chapter.
Well, now that we've kind of heard where you guys are from, how you got here, it's always interesting to me to hear those stories, because it just shows that there is no recipe for success. It really depends on the individual. So we have a lot of new people. Those people are in the same boat we were when we started out. They have very little knowledge of the industry. They might not even know what a union is, like most of us when we were coming in. what would they need to know? What's going to set them up for the most success in our industry? And as I told you guys as we were prepping for this, steer your comments towards the person that is starting the first of next month. They're fresh in the job, either as a chapter manager or an assistant manager. And what can they do? How can they be successful in this industry? Also, what can they avoid? Don't be afraid to talk about your mistakes. A lot of times in our industry, we want to not really highlight those, but that's where we learn. And they should be discussed. It's what people need to know so that they don't make the same mistake. Les, if you got to tell either yourself starting next month or that brand new person, what would you tell them?
I think first and foremost, try to if you're assistant manager, try to learn from the manager as best you can. I also would put myself out there to say, try to find some other people within the organization. Fortunately, we meet rather frequently, and it's a chance for you to meet other chapter managers. And I think that that's probably been a bigger part of forming a peer group or a network of people that you can call and ask questions about. I think that's a real important factor here, and having somebody you can trust for that. I think that also learning as much as you possibly can about the collective bargaining process is extremely important. I would also tell me back in the day that I would learn everything I had to know about the office administration, because at some point, I've had to retrain 2 or 3 people to do the job. And if you don't know that job backwards and forwards, it makes it very difficult to train somebody. So that's some of the things that I think were hard for me in the beginning was getting all that information down and figuring out how to do all that.
That's something that definitely gets overlooked from time to time, especially by chapter managers, is the general administration of the office. And I have a lot of respect for people that they know it inside and out. It doesn't mean you're doing the job. You have people that do that. That's the reason those jobs are there. But I want to touch on something else you said, because I bet it's going to come up again. But Les mentioned the importance of having that peer group, having the people to reach out to. And that was something I experienced coming on. Was I never ran into somebody who didn't say, call me. If there is just one thing you can take, if you're new listening to this, as you meet people in this industry, they mean it when they say it. Jeff, you look like you got a lot on your mind.
No, I just, I
Yes,
agree
it's-
with,
no, I don't have much on my mind right now.
Just everything else, yeah.
I agree with what Les and Ryan, both of you just said. I mean, number one on my list as far as what to avoid is not growing your network sooner. We have, I happen to be in a great peer group with Steve now, worked with Les with the International Foundation, and Richard and I have known each other for years through AEI and other meetings. But I think that advice that you both have stated is paramount, that it's so important to reach out to the incredible talent, both within the NECA chapters and with the NECA national staff, because we have such diversity in background, as evidenced by the people on this call, that there's a great resources available.
I can speak for the labor relations team at NECA. That's what we're here for. We're here to be support for you guys in the chapters. We support the field staff, and that's what your field reps are there for, and the regional directors. It's there to be your backstop, to be that person, to help in any way that they can. Do I flip a coin or do I make them arm wrestle?
I think Steve's got me on that one. So.
I was about to say, I don't know. Steve might lose that arm wrestling contest there. But Richard, why don't you tell us? And before you do, so of the folks on the call, Richard, you'd probably be the newest. And that's part of the reason why I wanted you on here is you are the closest to have just started, even though you didn't just start yesterday. You probably have it very fresh in your mind of, well, shoot, I wish I would have known that. So take it away, man.
Yeah, no, I certainly do have it fresh in my mind, and it's interesting you say that because I felt like just a few years ago, it felt like I was still the youngest person, and still pretty young, but just looking at my region, whenever we get together for regional meetings and our managers meetings and all those, I look around the room and it's like, shoot, wow, I'm actually one of the people here that's been here the longest now, and it's odd, but it also has made me aware that, just to be more, I guess, cognizant of, like you said, the people starting new and what kind of how to advise them, how to talk to them, and give them some tips, because I know I would have loved those things. So I appreciate being here. I think this is a great topic. For me, I'd echo some of the things that Les said. One of the things that is most important in the beginning is just to be a sponge. Absorb as much information as you can, listen, stay engaged. I tried to use in my personal life as well, just use every experience as a learning opportunity. There's something that you can take away from everything that you experience and from everything that you go through. And I think it's important to self-reflect on, what you're going through in your job, and how it turns out, the results, and learning from those things. And when you do make those mistakes, make sure you don't make them again. And then the last thing I would say is just, I think it's important to try and figure out how you're going to deal with the stress of this job. I mean, it's very demanding. There are, lots of things being thrown at you at the same time, and you got to be able to time manage, to prioritize. But also, when you're off the clock, which is not, ever really, but when you do have those free times, to be able to decompress, and it's important to be able to take those, to refresh yourself, and put those reset, to stay on top of it. So
It's really good. And you brought up a interesting point there, that the time management. Show of hands, who's got that figured out? That's what I thought. It's kind of like when you talk to a doctor and say they practice medicine. It's never perfected. It's something that we juggle every day. Well, I'm going to get to Steve to hear his take, but Richard, you bring up that time management. I want to stick on that for a second, because that is one that can hit somebody that's new, because burnout is a real thing. You can sink countless hours into these positions and still never get everything done. And that whole the comments you made about that disconnecting, about the personal time, it's very important. And it's a lot of people would think, well, I'm not working as hard as I should be. I'm being selfish here. And in reality, you're not. If you don't take that time to maintain yourself, you're not going to be the best you can be in your position. That those countless hours that you are sinking in are not 100%. Let's talk about that time management just for a second. Does anybody that's in here right now have something very specific you do? So I'm just going to open that up. Whoever wants to jump in, go for it.
I keep the Microsoft, I think it's Microsoft Task or To Do, something along those lines. I keep that open on my desktop all the time, and I'm just adding things to that list so that I don't forget. The other thing is just, my calendar, keeping an up to date, and having a calendar request for everything, that helps. If it's not on my calendar, too easy to forget. And I hate to say it, but it doesn't exist. Unfortunately, there's just too many things going on. And then for stress management, I would just say, for myself, I like to go on like a walk in the evening with my dog and my wife.
Yeah, Ryan, I think from my perspective, I got 26 local unions, and out of those 26, there's always 5 or 6 that have a list of issues that have a priority over the other, and they're very demanding. They want to meet in person. They don't want to do anything like we're doing now via Zoom or some other type of online software. So, when you get into that, it can scramble you up pretty quick if you're not careful. For me, it's prioritizing the issues. Are there money issues on the table for a grievance? If we're in negotiations, are we close? Do we need to be moving faster? Do we need to be responding to the union in a way that we're paying attention and prioritizing? So if I've got a grievance issue and money's on the clock, where there's an 8-hour penalty that's at play, I'll tend to give that a little more attention than I would another grievance where there is no money on the table. It's just a dispute over some language or something like that. Hopefully you have some delegation. You have some folks in the office that you can delegate some of the issues or the conversations or the matters to. But, for me, I will tell you, my job is very stressful. And, we're hiring, I'm hiring folks to help staff our chapter up to deal with things maybe more timely, but just, being able to delegate more. I'm actually on vacation right now, so I'm really, really not a good spokesperson for time management. But I do believe that in these jobs, you have to pay attention to your health.
Again, self-maintenance, making sure you're able to perform at your best, whether it's in your professional life or your personal life, it's paramount. I want to stick on this one just a little bit longer, and Steve, I promise I'm going to get back to you and let you give your advice, because I have a few other things in my back pocket as well that I haven't completely told you guys about, and I can see Jeff having probably a little bit of remembrance of a panel I had him on where I did it to him there. So I haven't changed my ways, Jeff. But Les, and I mean, you've got a chapter there, and you've got a similar experience to these guys. What do you do from the time management standpoint? How do you avoid that burnout?
Well, I'm a lot like Richard. I have a list for everything, personally and business wise. I keep lists for everything I'm doing. Otherwise, I will forget it. I learned that a long time ago. It's one of those deals my dad's always done, and I just ingrained in me. So, as far as the time management, I think the hard part is cutting this off when you get home. You're sitting there, you've been dealing with problems all day long, and you've got to develop a mechanism within your head to deal with the fact that when I get home, I'm going to cut this stuff off. It'll be there tomorrow, and because our time to a large extent is not really controlled by us; it's controlled by other factors. We can start off a day with a whole week of what we're going to do on Monday morning at 8:05. We get a phone call, and that whole week just changes. And that's part of you've got to go with the changes, but you've also got to be able to adapt and reprioritize when the time comes. I think Steve hit it pretty well. He's prioritizing within what he's going to be able to get done and how he's going to do it. I think that's very important as well.
Yeah, I would just add all great points. But in addition, time management is managing the time and helping the people that you're dealing with. What I mean by that is if you have a meeting, with a contractor or your officers or a trust fund meeting, a special meeting, you have a specific agenda, as to what you want to accomplish, what the goal of the meeting is, keeping to that agenda and giving people their time back. If you schedule a meeting with a contractor for a certain time and you say it's going to be an hour and you end up being half an hour, you've given a busy executive 30 minutes in which to do something else. So I think it's important to respect not just your time, but the time of those that you're dealing with.
So we were talking a little bit about time management for those of you listening and watching at home. As with anything in these careers, we have interruptions, we have technical difficulties, we have phone calls, emails, and text messages that come in that can completely derail your day. I've always said the biggest mistake a chapter manager can make is starting out their day with a to-do list, because you're never going to touch it. Good luck. But Steve, I have not forgotten you. And just as a personal note, Steve has been a great resource to me. He's a lot of the reason why I'm here in this industry. Steve helped me find it, helped me know what NECA was and pronounce it properly, and tell me a little bit about the union and the IBW and the way all this stuff works. So I can never say thank you enough to Steve for all that he's done for me and for my career and for a lot of other folks as well, but I can really only speak for me. But Steve, what does that new person need to know?
Well, Ryan, thank you. Thank you for recognizing that. I appreciate it. I think what I'm going to really just say is you're going to walk in the door and you're going to walk into current conversation. So you're going to be in the midst of what's going on currently. But what I would encourage me to do is do your history. learn everything you can about the history of the IBW. You need to know that, your own character and your own personality, when you start this industry, that can stick with you for the whole, your whole career. I was told when I walked into this industry, and it was by actually my father, and my dad came to me when I started this job, and he says, no, I'm not going to say it the way he said it, because he said it with a few choice words, but he said, don't be like all the others, and actually know your agreement. Know what your language says, know what the intent is, understand it, and you live by it.
Well, and you hit on a lot of good points there is we're hired to be experts. We're not hired as experts, but we're hired to become experts. We're to be experts of the agreement, of the process, of getting, well, I can't use the word I want to use right now, so I'm going to say getting things done. And you mentioned something that I want to dig into a little bit, because it actually goes to advice I gave to a new manager. And if that person is listening to this, he's going to know who he is, and I'm sure I'll get a text or a phone call. So yeah, that'll be a fun one. But I was helping this individual actually prep for a mock CIR. I was running one for Sealy. And this person called me and was like, hey, I'm getting ready. I had them in the litigant chair, and, I got some questions for you. So we ran through those. And then as we're wrapping up the call, he goes, I just want to win. I want to do so well. I want to win. And I said, all right, well, slow down. Your job is not to win in this industry. Winning implies you're going to eventually lose. Your job is to get the issue resolved. Sometimes that means things work out in your favor. Sometimes they don't. But the win is, did the issue get resolved? If you spend your career marking wins and losses, you're not going to be here very long.
No, I think you've got to temper expectations when you do this job. You can't tell a contractor, hey, I'm going to go in there and we're going to tear this union up this time and we're going to win. I mean, if the contractors, and sometimes they have ideas that are not going to work. So you've got to temper expectations. You go in and you fight the best you can. You do the best you can, but there's things that go on that you don't have any control over. And if you are unfortunate enough to not be able to get the issue resolved and you end up at CIR, well, it's once again out of your hands. You can do the best job presenting, but you're still eyeing that panel of your peers to come up with a solution that you couldn't do at home.
Kind of piggybacking off of what you were saying and Les was saying. I mean, I think, or I'm sorry, what Steve was saying and Les was saying, with being the stopgap and what we're talking about right now. I mean, I think another important thing that in the beginning is tough to do. One, because maybe you're new, you don't want to say no, or you don't maybe have the experience to do it as well in the beginning. But it's to not be afraid also to tell your contractors when they're wrong.
Hey, Ryan, if I may go back to a point Steve just made on knowing your history. One of the things that I did when I started, and I have required all my staff that I've hired over the years to do, is to read the NECA book, Empowering the Century, which is what NECA National published at its 100th anniversary back in 2001. And it really helped me, and I think it's helped my staff, understand the history, and obviously to know where you've come from. It helps it'll help you in knowing where you're going. And the more recent edition that I'm looking at, frankly, I've read recently, which I thought was fascinating from a union perspective, was the Harry Van Arsdale book, the legendary business manager from New York City. It was incredible. It talked about all the initiatives that the New York City local put together under his leadership. And so those are two specific books that I would suggest someone new to our industry consider reading.
And for anybody listening that might be interested in reading these, what I'll do is in the description of this, I'll link to a way to get them. And I'll be like one of the YouTubers and say, not sponsored, just want to make sure you guys get the information that you need, because those are good reads. Thank you, Jeff. All right. Well, you guys touched on the general. Steve?
Yeah, no, and I guess sometimes if you don't drill down into what you're kind of outlaying, it's it's important, but don't neglect those meeting minutes from labor management meetings, your board meetings, your district council meetings. All those areas have really, if they're written up pretty decent, they'll have some good information in some of them, and that'll kind of help you get caught up on where things have been going on for the last 5, 10, 15 years as well. That's something I did. I spent a lot of time reading meeting minutes from all over. So,
as somebody who sits on council, Jeff, you've sat on council. Steve is actually coming on as a panel member here soon for the outside cases. Minutes are beyond important. You got to know what happened. And I know that there are areas that have practices that don't take minutes, things like that. And if you found success in that, I don't want to be the one to tell you to change, but I will tell you that at the end of the day, what's written down on that piece of paper is going to carry way more weight than you realize. And what's not written will carry even more.
Yeah,
So
I couldn't agree more, Ryan. The minutes are paramount. And frankly, and it's not a glamorous part of our job, but Steve hit this earlier, records management, being organized in the office administration. Richard talked about it and Les as well. That is so important. I mean, the time I can think of that we've spent looking for minutes that related to a contract interpretation or shift rates or overtime policies and so forth. It is so important to get that stuff right at your office.
I mean, people forget how impactful labor management meeting minutes are. Those LMC minutes, that is as strong as what's written in your contract. Once that's signed by you and by the union, that is now an interpretation. I know we have the council policy 13 that says council doesn't set precedent. Labor management minutes do. When you write down, this is what we mean by this section, that's written there. Until that changes, until you have a contrary decision or contrary minutes, or you change the language, that's in stone. So, and that's important. And that record management that Jeff was highlighting there, I was fortunate when I came into the chapter that I had somebody that was very organized, and I had the ability to go through and read and catch up, like Steve was talking about, reading minutes, going through negotiation binders and all that stuff. And it made me feel as if I was there. I experienced those. And I hope I didn't leave it in a state of disarray for the gentleman that came in behind me. He hasn't yelled at me too much, so hopefully it was good. But that is very important. If you find yourself coming into a chapter and that is not the case, I'm going to give you the same advice that somebody would give you in investing. The best time to start investing was 30 years ago. The second best time is today. Start today. Start your organization. Start your record keeping properly. Let's look at this from the negotiation standpoint. You were all there at some point in your career. You had that first round of negotiations, that first contract, that first time walking into the room, whether it was a pre-meeting with your contractors or you stepped in, the union sitting across the table, and you're ready to exchange proposals. What is your advice to that person who is shaking in their boots, stepping in for the first time? Les?
I think that, I was so naive that I wasn't shaking in my boots. I was just so naive that I didn't even know what I didn't know. And I remember sitting in the first meeting we had before the actual negotiation started. And it's like, all right, we got a list of 25 items. I said, are all these 25 items what we really need? Oh, no, we only want these 4. Well, why are we doing 25? Well, because they're going to give us 25. We got a horse trade and we got to do all this other stuff. And it was mind-blowing to me at the time to think that that's how, things were being done at the time. We don't do that anymore. We don't care if the union throws 30 at us. We're going to stick with our core group of ideas to start with. But that in itself was just mind-boggling to me, and just the way that labor relations were and what we've evolved to now, which is we come up with 4 or 5 topics, whatever it is that we really want to negotiate on, and that's what we stick with nowadays as well. So I would say, once again, get it down to a manageable number, and if the union wants to come in with 30, let them. you don't have to trade off anything that you're sitting on if it's important to you.
That's a very good point, and something that I very much want to impress upon anybody listening to take away. You don't always have to reflect what the other side of the table does. Jeff, what would you say?
Well, first of all, I would make sure my committee's prepared on what to say and perhaps more importantly, what not to say. You can get yourself into some real situations if you state stuff that's not factually accurate, or you could open up requests for information on financial records and so forth. I mean, there's some obviously some laws that pertain to negotiations. In addition to making sure my committee was prepared, prepare yourself. You don't have to be the loudest person in the room to be the most effective. And pauses are great. Silence is terrific. You can always caucus. You can always say you need to think about something and get back in a future session. So most importantly, you can lead from behind, meaning you can meet with your committee. You can speak with the business manager privately or separately beforehand, and to try to push things to a good resolution. But I would most recommend that you stay calm, you listen more than you speak, and you do your best to keep your committee together to find a good resolution.
Steve, what are you going to tell somebody walking into that negotiation meeting?
So, first time negotiations, 30-year business manager. He's been in most probably his 30-year career. Let's just say 100, 200 negotiations. Very seasoned person. I'm walking into this room. I'm going to ask my board to put a very seasoned management person on my committee. Because there's going to be things happening in that room that you're not going to be remotely picking up on. I think that would be one of the things that I would tell the new me that's walking in, is surround yourself with some folks who have been there before.
That's great advice, because what you're essentially hitting on is it's okay to not know.
Absolutely.
But that's not the end of the sentence. You need that person there to help back you up and to help learn, because very quickly you're going to start finding you're going to be the one in the room with the most experience that has been through the most. But everybody starts somewhere. And Richard, you had to start somewhere.
But I think one of the things, like Steve said, does well, that picking your contractors correctly for the committee is important. He mentioned somebody with lots of experience. I think that's very important. But also just contractors with diverse customers or different ways of operating their business. Whether it's maybe having somebody from the commercial, the industrial market, a smaller contractor. They've all got different perspectives and needs.
Well, I think what you guys just proved is we could probably spend a whole podcast on the art of negotiations and the way to run those meetings. Gentlemen, this has been beyond amazing. The advice, the just words of wisdom. I've been doing this for quite some time now, and I've learned just from sitting here and listening to you guys. So just for me personally, I appreciate it. I do hope anybody listening to this, whether you're new or you've been doing this for decades, that you were able to take something away. If you didn't, then you probably weren't listening close enough. So go back and listen again. But as with anything, we do have to come to an end here. But before we do, I just want to open it up to you guys for just any closing comments, any last piece of advice that you want to just drop in before we close up. Les, I'm going to let you go first.
Yeah, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Chapter Executive Leadership Institute. We put that program together to help all managers, but specifically for new managers. And it was designed around a platform of allowing them to ask any question that they wanted to ask. There's labor relations training in there. We're going to see some of that this summer at the Labor Relations Conference, but we do mock CIR in that. And if you want to get a flavor and feel for what CR is going to look like and feel like, that's a really good place to go learn about it before you have to go. But also, we pair people up. It's a great networking opportunity for you to look for peers if you don't have any. And it's a great networking opportunity to meet some maybe more seasoned managers as well. So I'd highly encourage anybody to go, but specifically if you're a relatively new manager, it's designed to help you.
Awesome. Very good words. I can't speak highly enough of Sealy as well. That's one of the, I mean, all the meetings are great, but that's one of the most impactful and has been the most impactful in my career. Steve, what do you got for us?
I get to go second this time, huh? All right.
You've been keeping track?
I'm adding cleanup. It's been tough. Got some very smart guys on this podcast, and it's a pleasure to sit here and have conversations with them, and you as well, Ryan. I think one of the things that I would like to wrap up with is, if you're new and walking into the doors of the chapter and you're getting into your labor relation issues, if the chapter has some type of supporting attorney, don't run to that attorney to get their advice, their guidance, their input, if they don't have a lot of knowledge and history behind the language of the contracts, the issues with the locals in the IBW in that jurisdiction that you're supporting or you're working in. I say that because while they are a great, valuable resource, and Jeff, no pun intended by not running to an attorney for information, but you've got minutes, you've got field representatives and NECA staff who are well informed of the business managers, other IO reps that they work with in that jurisdiction that are very knowledgeable of the issues that you're going to be challenged with. Reach out to those folks first. One of the things that I'm seeing in our industry today is more outside involvement from attorneys, labor attorneys, and those folks, their opinions, what they believe the intent of our language is. And that doesn't, to me, stand on any ground. That's an individual's opinion and advice. But you got to go back and know the history and of the issues, the language. So don't hesitate to reach out to the NECA field staff for that help, who are well organized and familiar with the information that they have.
I kind of like what Steve put there is attorneys often find themselves at the butt of the joke, and they're pretty used to that, my boss included, and I'm glad he has a good sense of humor. But that is something to be aware of, is even if that is your education and you're now a chapter manager, but you were an attorney in a former life, you're not an attorney anymore. The attorney they have a job, they have a role, and I don't want to belittle it or take away from it, but they are a tool. They are a resource to the chapter. If you have counsel that you use, and you've got outside counsel, you need to know how to effectively use them, just like you would any other resource that you have for the chapter. And Steve hits at an important point. If they don't know the background, they don't know the history, they can give you very good and sound legal advice. And that's where they are effective, but that's not always what is the full picture. You do have to understand the full picture and know where their advice and know how they fit in to everything else. So yes, very good sound advice there. Richard?
Yeah, so I would just say, to take pride in your position, be a good representative, be aware of how you're presenting yourself to everybody in the industry and outside the industry.
I can see that Jeff is itching and raring to go, especially given some of the comments I probably just made about an attorney. So, Counselor, would you like to close this out a little?
Three things. Thank you to everyone. You guys were great. Ryan, putting this together. Richard, Les, Steve. I learned so much today. Yes, we all inhabit the same NECA world. And I think my closing advice would be, first, help others succeed. Help your contractors succeed. Help your staff succeed. Make them be interested in their success, and help your IBEW locals succeed. If you do that, I think you'll have a long, successful career in our industry. And then last, I'll say this. When the now late Bill Walton graduated from UCLA, Coach Wooden gave him a note, and he said, "It's what you learn after you know it all that really counts." And I think that's so true for this program. We have a lot of experience on this panel here, but I know we all learned so much. And I think this podcast and the other efforts that NECA Labor Relations Teams puts out is great information that we can all use to keep learning. So thank you so much for allowing me to be part of it.
So I don't script these. I don't ever ask anybody to say any certain things. And only thing I do is give our guests an outline. But Jeff, you touched on the thing that I absolutely wanted to close this out on. So how you did that, I don't know, but I really appreciate it. We never stop learning. It doesn't matter where you are in your career, whether it's day 1 or day 1,000. Never stop learning. So I hope that this has been a learning experience for you guys. I hope it's been a learning experience for anybody listening. Just appreciate you gentlemen being here. Thank you for taking this time out of your day. We're all extremely busy. And for everybody listening, thank you for tuning in. We're going to definitely be doing these more regularly, and I hope you get something out of them. If you have a topic you want covered, if you have something you want us to discuss, if you're interested in coming on yourself, please reach out, let us know. We'll be able to make that happen, and we'll have a conversation, and I guarantee you we'll go down a rabbit hole or find our way off topic a little bit, but it'll be a lot of fun, and hopefully everybody will learn something from it. So thank you everybody for listening, and we'll see you on the next one.